very, very, very important that we do this. There's been a counter-revolution in this country. And when you read Rediscovering Americanism, you're going to learn all about it. The intellectuals who were behind it, their influence on the politicians, both Republicans and Democrats, the philosopher kings who they used as the basis for their ideology, and how much this has changed America. You got to look at it this way. The real difference between we constitutional conservatism and the leftists, the progressives, the statists, is individual liberty. Individual liberty. Oh, I know, they'll talk about liberty and individualism and so forth, but they'll talk about it in the context of the general will, the general good, the community. Everybody should have this, everybody should have that. This should be free, this should be free, redistribution of wealth, social engineering. This is how they define liberty. That's not liberty, that's tyranny. Because somebody has to make all those decisions. There's a puppeteer. When you centralize government, nothing good comes of it. Can you give me a specific example in world history, in the history of mankind, where centralized autocratic government led to more liberty and prosperity and a better lifestyle? No, you can't, because it doesn't exist. And this is what the framers of your Constitution were most concerned about. That's why we have separation of powers. That's why we have defined limitations for each branch of government. That's why we have a specific Bill of Rights that specifically protects you from the government. Not you from each other, you from the government. That's why these things were put in place. They also feared, secondarily, mobocracy, which you see in places like Berkeley. They said, you know, mobocracy leads to tyranny and centralization too. That's why the only directly elected body under our Constitution originally was the House of Representatives, the so-called People's House. The United States Senate, they were supposed to represent its members, the state legislatures. So the states had some say in what the federal government was doing. Then, of course, you know the president wasn't elected directly either, neither was the vice president. Through this electoral college process, again, where the states have a role, and the judges, which are almost an afterthought, they said, you know, they get lifetime appointment. Now, why? Because they're so brilliant? No. They wanted them to be disconnected from politics per se, so they wouldn't be influenced. Not so they could impose their own policy preferences and their own personal opinions in the law and impose them on us, but because they wanted them to have a good faith, earnest effort to interpret the law, to apply the law, not to confound it and twist it and then nationalize parts of our economy and so forth. So this counter-revolution took place. Really, it started in the 1860s and 70s, and it worked its way in the late 1800s in a significant way, and then the early 1900s is called the Progressive Era, which again, I'll talk about more when my next book comes out. But you had these professors and intellectuals and writers who got behind this and pushed it. And many of them were extremely sympathetic to Marx. In the 20th century, as we moved into the 1900s, they were very sympathetic to Lenin and Russia, as was John Dewey, one of the masterminds behind this. Woodrow Wilson despised the Declaration of Independence, and he despised the Constitution. And when you despise one, you have to despise the other, because the Constitution is the governing manifestation of what? The Declaration of Independence. Why do they hate the Declaration of Independence? What does it talk about? God-given unalienable rights, the right to life, liberty, and happiness. Well, if you're trying to construct this paradise from the top down with a relative handful of masterminds and an army of bureaucrats, you can't have people going their own way, thinking for themselves, exercising their free will. No. You need what? Conformity. Conformity. That's why when you look in these regimes of the last century, Mao's China, Stalin's Soviet Union, and so forth, anybody who thought for themselves, anybody who expressed him or herself, anybody who wouldn't do exactly what they were told had to be eliminated. They were either killed or pushed into some gulag. You see it in North Korea. You still see it in China. You still see it in aspects of Russia and so forth. Because in order to get to nirvana, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot have people who are rowing in the wrong direction. Now, of course, you know what this is. That's totalitarianism. But is not progressivism an aspect of totalitarianism. Look at their attack today on free speech. Look how they rejected a legitimate election of a president of the United States through our constitutional system, our electoral college. Look at how they're now nullifying federal law when it comes to immigration, these phony sanctuary cities and sanctuary states, across the board. They reject the rule of law unless it's the rule of law that they like. They claim not to like police states unless they're running the police state, may I say. So that's why this is crucially important. Our framers were so brilliant, they left us this tool, Convention of States. Now you'll hear people lie about it. They will call it a constitutional convention. It's not a constitutional convention. It doesn't say that in Article 5. It's an alternative process for amending the Constitution. It's not a constitutional convention where you can throw everything out there. Well, you'll have a runaway convention. It's impossible because the rules that apply are the same ratification rules as if Congress made the proposals. 38 states. 38 states. Now, what about this question? Mark, if the feds aren't going to follow the Constitution today, what makes you think they'll follow it even after these amendments? Well, it won't matter. Because at least some of the amendments I'm proposing and some of these that have been discussed here in that sound clip, they bypass the federal government. The states are making more and more decisions. And that's the brilliance of this process. And the other brilliance of this process is Congress has no say in what takes place at this Convention of States. The president has no say in what takes place. This process bypasses the problem. And the problem is this massive federal leviathan with all this power. Now, let me suggest to you, we're at 11 states right now. If we get to 15 states, 18 states, 20 states in the next year, 2 or 3, then you're going to watch all hell break loose. Because then the phony Republicans, the radical Democrats, the joke that we call the media, they're all going to team up because they like this design that they created in Washington, D.C. And I say to those so-called conservatives who reject this whole idea, and we have them. We have them in state legislatures in Arkansas and other states that are blocking this. One president of a Senate, one speaker of a House who are blocking it. When they say, oh, well, we're going to have a runaway system and so forth and so on, I ask you this. Don't we already have a runaway system? The Constitution has been molested. It has been brutalized. It has been bastardized by federal officials, whether they're dressed up as senators or House members or judges or presidents or the heads of agencies or whatever they are. Have they not turned the Constitution in many respects on its head? Of course they have. And so it's not a matter of doing nothing and hoping for the best. We do nothing and something happens, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So congratulations to Texas. You check with your state. You see where your state is. You contact your state representative, your state senator, and you demand that they get on board. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I can't figure out another answer. I really can't. And if we think electing Republicans to Capitol Hill and to the White House are going to fix things, they may slow things down here and there, but they're not going to give us our republic back. They're not going to give us our Constitution back. That system is in place at the federal level. We need to address it at the grassroots level. One footnote. If we don't do this now, I don't know what's going to happen. We control more state legislatures than any time in modern history. We control more state legislatures than any time in modern history. Thanks to Obama and the Democrats, and thanks to you and your activism, they lost 1,000 state representatives or state senators. It's not going to get much better than this. So if we don't, grab this by the horns now and run with it, then we may never have a chance again.